Okay, this is Raising the Ribs Day, Monday, June 9th. So we started by raising the scaffolding and bringing over the bridge beam. Didn't get video of that. And then we brought over 4 of the ribs just to get started and get in place. This is us putting up the first rib and realizing, the bridge beam is not going to sit on the pad. Actually, it's going to be off the edge of the pad. And we had dug a ditch along the edge of the pad so that the welder could get in. So now we needed to fill that ditch back in so that we could get it kind of level with the pad with some cinder blocks. So moving some cinder blocks over. And then we're going to be putting the bridge beam up onto those cinder blocks. We wanted to get the cinder blocks level with the pad so that when we set the bridge beam on top of it, it was sitting right up next to it and level. And now we're slotting the ribs into place. There was a little bit of confusion about if it should end up being flush with the bottom of the base plate. It definitely isn't going to be flush with the bridge beam because there's an angle on there and the ribs are cut at a 90 degrees. So we were just a little bit concerned that 90 degree was supposed to be flush with the base plate. So we spent a little bit of time worrying about that and arguing about it. But we found that in the end, it is not completely flush. There's like maybe a 1/4 inch that it's raised up on the base plate once it's all in place. I can show a video of that later. Okay, so I cut out a bunch of us standing around debating the best way to do this. What we eventually landed on was to slot each rib into the base plate position, and then Craig screwed in one side of the self-tapping screw into each rib. Our engineered plans called for 1 screw or 2 screws at each end of the rib, so a total of 4 screws per rib, which is different from what Arched Cabins calls out, but we decided to follow the engineered plans. For right now, everything is just resting on the bridge beam while Craig screws into the correct position on the base plate. And then we went back and slotted everything into its spot on the bridge beam afterwards. And here we have a jump cut because my phone overheated and stopped recording. But basically we left 6 slots open to be sure that we'd have enough strength with all of our helpers to do the lift. And at this point, we have 3 new people that came out to help. Our friend Corbett, our friend John, and Max, who we met through the Arched Cabins page. Wanted to come out and help. He only lived about 40 minutes away. And here we are doing the lift. So we had 6 people helping with this part, and then Craig on the tractor. This part felt super sketchy, I'll be honest. It was doing a lot of bouncing and wiggling, which we didn't really expect. We thought we maybe would be able to slot in at the bottom and then slot in at the top for that one on the end. But we really needed to have somebody up there in order to get that angle right. So it's all just felt sketchy because it's hanging there. But luckily, Corbett was willing to just hop onto the scaffolding and head right up and try and figure it out. So this is what he's doing now. At this point, it is not fully seated in that one on the end. We tried to maybe push it up with the second one to get to the right angle. It just wasn't slotting like all the way fully seating into there. So yeah, Corbett was a real homie, just clambering right up onto that scaffolding to try and get it seated properly. There was a lot of communication between us and Craig at the tractor, trying to figure out if it was just that we needed to pull the ribs back farther or if they needed to come down a little bit. But eventually we were able to get it seated. We realized that as soon as one was fully seated in there, we needed to get it tapped in with the screw so that it wouldn't slide back out again when we made additional adjustments on the next one. So we tossed a drill and screws up to Corbett, and he started getting them drilled in. At this point, we felt a little bit safer with at least a couple of the ribs in, so we made our scaffolding a bit better and decided to head over to the other side to get the other far end up so that we'd feel a little bit safer here. This side was a little bit tough because it wasn't really square yet, so there was a lot of shoving in and out with the rib to try and get it seated properly, but then eventually we were able to get it in there and then get it seated on the bottom rib. Sorry, this is all cut off at the top. I promise I realized later that I needed to adjust my camera angle. Once we had those in, we were able to take a little break, get Corbett some water, and discuss the game plan for the rest of the ribs. We found it was easiest if we kind of slid it up upside down so that the person on the scaffolding could grab it and then do a little flip. He would pull it into place on the top end first, and then we'd get it into place onto the rib after he'd already screwed one side in up there. Then we'd screw both sides in, top and bottom, and move on to the next one. And since this whole next section is just a lot of time lapse, I'll just take a moment to say that we used 2x6s to attach to the lifting side of the ribs. We attached them with the same self-tapping Tex screws, and then attached the big toe straps to that, and then attached the toe straps to the tractor. These toe straps are probably overkill, but we didn't know what to get, so we went bigger than we needed to. The 2x6s are attached probably 10 or 11 feet up. We tried to get about halfway up, basically. Okay, there we go. Now we can see the whole thing. So by this point, we had a pretty good system going, and really it only took 4 or 5 people to be doing this part. So we had a little more people than we even really needed at this point. Having a large group at the very beginning for the initial lift, super worthwhile. But then after that, 5 people was plenty. So at this point, it's going really quick. It's really easy to slide everything into place because it's all getting a lot more square. And here I'm meeting fellow Archie or future Archie Joan, forgetting that I'm standing directly in front of the camera while we talk about what's going on over here while the guys are getting all those ribs in. And we think of something useful we can be doing, so we're bringing the last of the ribs a little bit closer so that they can just get slotted up and in. So yeah, I would say gather as many people as you can for the initial lift. That'll be super helpful. But then for the rest of the day, you really only need like 4 or 5. We chose to purchase this scaffolding. We got it for $800 off of Facebook Marketplace used. I think we're going to be using it throughout this entire project, so I feel like it was a good thing to purchase rather than to rent. And they let me help on the last one, so I could say I did one. I'd like to give a huge shout out to Craig's parents, to Corbett, to John, to Max and Joan, everybody that came out to help out with this. It was huge. It was awesome. Thank you guys. And she's up. So now it's just a matter of taking down those 2x6s and doing a little bit of clear up. And here's the crew smiling and waving for the camera. Thanks, everybody.